My undergarments are missing, Margaret. You are the only one who cleans my room. So tell me. I'll not take anything, Grace. I would never steal from you.
Margaret never imagined that marriage would feel like a prison. She never thought the people she called family would become her worst enemies. My besties, have you ever been trapped in a situation where no one believes you? Not even your husband? Let me tell you about a woman who lost everything except her truth. The marble floors of the easy home were always spotless. Margaret made sure of that. But on this particular morning, no amount of cleaning could wash away what was about to happen. Margaret stood in the hallway, her hands folded in front of her apron, her heart beating faster than usual. Something in the air felt different today. Her two sisters-in-law, Grace and Victoria, had been whispering in the living room for the past hour, their voices low and urgent, occasionally glancing in her direction. Grace appeared in the hallway suddenly, her expression tight and controlled. Victoria followed close behind her, her arms crossed over her chest. Their eyes were sharp and focused intensely on Margaret. "Margaret," Grace said, her voice cutting through the morning stillness like a blade. "We need to talk to you right now. This is important." Margaret swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. "Yes, of course. What is it? Is something wrong?" "My undergarments are missing," Grace said flatly, without any preamble. "The expensive new ones I just bought last week. I left them folded neatly in my drawer on Monday evening, and when I went to get them this morning, they were completely gone." Margaret blinked, confused by the accusation. "I do not understand. Why are you telling me this? I am sorry they are missing, but I do not know anything about where they could be." Victoria stepped even closer. "You clean all the rooms in this house every single day, Margaret. You do the laundry, you organize our closets, you have access to everything we own. So we are asking you directly, where exactly are Grace's things?" The accusation landed like a heavy stone. Margaret felt her throat tighten painfully. "I did not take anything that does not belong to me. I would never do such a thing. I respect your privacy completely. I respect this family." "Then where are they?" Grace demanded, her voice rising sharply. "You are literally the only person who goes into my room besides me. You are the only person who touches my belongings. If you did not take them, then who did? Tell me that, Margaret." Tears welled up in Margaret's eyes quickly.
I did not take them. I promise you on everything holy. I did not. I would never disrespect anyone in this house. You must believe me. Please, I am begging you.
Victoria scoffed loudly.
Save your tears. We know what you are capable of. You came into this family with nothing, and now you steal? I did not steal anything. I would never disrespect this family. You must believe me. Please listen.
"I would never disrespect this family. You must believe me. Please listen to what I am saying." Margaret looked desperately toward Mrs. Ease, her eyes silently pleading for some defense, some word of support. Surely Mrs. Ease had noticed her diligence, her dedication, her constant efforts to serve everyone well. But the older woman simply turned slowly and walked away steadily toward her room without a word, leaving her daughter-in-law standing completely alone with her accusers. The silence that followed felt heavier than any words could have been. It was the silence of complete abandonment. Margaret felt her knees weaken beneath her. She had lost this battle before it had even truly begun. No one in this house would stand up for her. No one would question Grace and Victoria. No one would believe her word over theirs. With nowhere else to go, Margaret retreated quickly to the small bedroom she shared with her husband during his rare visits home. The room felt emptier than usual without Daniel's presence. His absence was a physical ache in her chest. She closed the door quietly and sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, her whole body trembling. Her shoulders shook violently as silent sobs escaped. She pressed both hands tightly to her face, trying desperately to muffle the sound of her crying. Margaret had been married to Daniel for 2 years now. He worked in London as an engineer, designing systems for commercial buildings and sending money home each month to support his family. The distance between them felt vast sometimes, especially on nights when she lay alone in their bed. She had moved into his family home after the wedding, as was expected in their culture. His mother, Mrs. Ease, was a quiet woman who spent most of her time in her room reading or at church attending prayer meetings. Grace and Victoria, both unmarried and living at home in their late 20s, had welcomed Margaret warmly at first. They had seemed genuinely happy to have another woman in the house. But over the months, things had slowly shifted. The warmth had cooled noticeably, the smiles had faded and been replaced with tight expressions. Small cutting comments had started to appear regularly, little criticisms about how she cleaned the floors, how she prepared the meals, how she spoke to visitors. Margaret tried desperately not to let it bother her. She told herself repeatedly that adjustment to a new family took time and patience. She had grown up watching her own mother navigate difficult family situations with grace and quiet endurance. She believed deep in her heart that if she just worked harder, if she stayed quiet and helpful, things would eventually improve. But they never did. The atmosphere only grew heavier with each passing week. She sat there alone for what felt like hours, her mind racing through everything that had just happened. How had her life come to this terrible point? She had entered this marriage with so much hope, with beautiful dreams of building a loving family, of being loved and accepted. Instead, she found herself accused of theft, isolated from the man she loved, and living in a house where she was treated like an outsider.
My dear family, have you ever been accused of something you did not do? Have you ever felt the deep pain of not being believed by those closest to you? Have you stood alone when you desperately needed someone to defend you? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts with me, please.
That same evening, as Margaret sat numbly on the bed, her phone suddenly rang loudly. Her husband's name flashed on the screen, Daniel. Her heart lifted desperately for just a moment. Maybe he was calling to check on her, to tell her he loved her, to remind her sure she was not alone. She wiped her tears away quickly and answered, trying to steady her voice.
Hello, Daniel.
Margaret, I just finished speaking with my sisters. They told me exactly what you did.
Her breath caught painfully, her heart sank.
Daniel, please listen. I did not do anything wrong.
Why would my sisters lie to me about this?
He asked sharply. They have no reason to make this up, Margaret. They are my family. I have known them my entire life. They would not fabricate something so serious. I am not saying they are lying, Margaret said carefully, her voice breaking. I am saying that I did not do it. Please, Daniel, you know me. You know my character. I would never steal from anyone, especially not from your family. Why would I do such a thing? I trusted you to be respectful in my family's home, he interrupted harshly. I left you there because I believed you would honor them, that you would make me proud. And this is what you do? You embarrass me like this? Daniel, please just listen to me, Margaret pleaded desperately, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Please let me explain what really happened. I do not want to hear excuses, Margaret. I heard everything I needed to hear from my sisters. Just fix this situation. Apologize to Grace. Stop causing trouble. Is that too much to ask? But I did not do anything wrong, she tried one more time. The line went dead. He had hung up on her abruptly. Margaret sat in the heavy silence, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her husband, the one person who should have stood by her side, had believed his sisters without question. He had not asked for her side. He had not given her any benefit of the doubt. He had simply accepted their version as truth and condemned her. She felt a hollow, terrible ache in her chest, a loneliness that seemed to stretch endlessly into the future. This was not what marriage was supposed to feel like. She had been abandoned, first by his family and now by him. She lay down slowly on the bed and stared at the ceiling, her tears flowing quietly. The days that followed were incredibly heavy with constant tension. Margaret moved silently through the house like a shadow, completing all her chores in absolute silence. She woke early each morning to prepare breakfast for everyone. She cleaned every single room meticulously, making sure not even a speck of dust remained. She served all the meals without complaint and retreated immediately to the kitchen afterward. Grace and Victoria continued making cutting remarks whenever they crossed her path. They no longer spoke to her directly unless it was to give an order or criticize something.
Make sure the rice is not too soft today, unless you plan to ruin that too. Yes, I will make sure it is prepared exactly as you prefer. I wonder what Daniel saw in you in the first place.
Margaret said nothing. She focused on stirring the pot carefully. Mrs. Ease sat at the dining table daily, sipping her tea quietly, saying nothing as always. Her silence had become its own form of judgment. Each night, Margaret lay in bed alone and thought about calling Daniel again. But she remembered his cold voice, his refusal to listen. She stopped trying. What was the point?
My besties, how long can someone endure constant silence and misunderstanding before it becomes unbearable? What would you do in my position? I truly want to know.
3 weeks after the first accusation, Margaret prepared dinner as usual with great care. She made jollof rice using the exact recipe that Daniel's mother had taught her. She fried plantains until they were perfectly golden and crispy. She made rich chicken stew with fresh tomatoes and peppers, seasoning it very carefully. She tasted everything multiple times, adjusting the salt and spices precisely. Everything seemed fine and delicious. When dinner was finally served, the entire family sat at the table. Margaret served each person carefully, making sure everyone had plenty of food. Grace took just one small bite of the rice and immediately set her fork down loudly.
This is absolutely terrible. Margaret, did you even taste this before serving it? Yes, I tasted it multiple times.
I followed the recipe very carefully. Is something wrong?
It has no flavor at all. How can you cook rice with no flavor? I am very sorry. I can make something else immediately.
How can you cook rice with no flavor? Did you forget to add seasoning? Or are you simply incompetent? I am very sorry, Margaret said quietly. I used the same recipe as always. I can make something else immediately if you prefer. It will only take a few minutes. Enough of this, Grace said loudly, standing abruptly from her chair. The sudden movement made Margaret flinch visibly. You are always sorry about everything, but nothing ever improves. You apologize constantly, but your work never gets better. What is the point of keeping you in this house if you cannot even cook a simple meal properly? She walked directly toward Margaret with clear purpose, her face tight with frustration and something that looked like satisfaction. Before Margaret could step back, before she could raise her hands protectively, Grace raised her hand high and struck her very hard across the face. The sharp sound echoed through the dining room. Margaret stumbled backward, her hand flying to her stinging cheek. The sting was sharp and immediate, but the shock and humiliation were far worse. She looked around the room desperately. Victoria deliberately looked away. Mrs. Ease sat completely motionless, her face expressionless, saying nothing. No one defended her, not a single person said a word. Pack all your things immediately, Grace said coldly. You are no longer welcome in this house. Get out now. Margaret opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her throat was completely closed with shock and grief. She turned slowly and walked unsteadily to her room, her legs feeling like they might give out. Her hands shook violently as she pulled a small bag from the closet and began packing clothes, toiletries, and a few personal items. When she finally walked out of the house carrying her bag, the heavy gate closed behind her with a terrible final sound. She stood on the street for a long moment, holding her bag tightly, looking back at the house that had never truly been her home. Then she turned and started walking, not knowing where she was going. My friends, have you ever felt so rejected and abandoned that you did not know where to turn? What did you do? How did you find strength? Margaret took a bus to her parents' home. The house was small, with faded paint and a roof that needed repair. Her father was a retired clerk who did small repair jobs. When he saw her with her bag, he stood from his chair on the porch. Margaret? What happened? She could not hold back the tears. She collapsed into his arms and wept. Inside, her mother, brother Samuel, and sister Joy gathered around her. She told them everything. The accusation, Daniel's disbelief, the cruelty, the slap, being thrown out. Her mother held her hand. My daughter, marriage is not easy. There are challenges. But Mama, I did nothing wrong, Margaret said through her tears. Her father sighed deeply. Margaret, we are a poor family. We do not have the means to support you if you leave your marriage. You must try to reconcile. But Papa, they threw me out. They do not want me there. Samuel spoke up. Then let her stay here. We will manage. But their father shook his head firmly. No. A woman's place is with her husband's family. We cannot keep her here. She must return. Margaret felt deep sadness. Even here, there was no refuge. 2 days later, her father took her back to the Ease home. He knocked on the gate, and Victoria opened it with a smirk. We have brought Margaret back, her father said humbly. Please forgive any misunderstanding. She is young, she will learn. Victoria looked at Margaret. Come in. Her father left quickly. Margaret stepped inside with her bag. Grace was in the living room. When she saw Margaret, she laughed. "So your parents could not keep you even for 3 days? They sent you back already?" Margaret said nothing. She walked to her room. Victoria called after her, "Welcome back. I hope you learned your lesson." That night, Margaret lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than ever. Nearly 4 months passed. Margaret continued her routine quietly. Then one evening, Daniel walked in unexpectedly with his suitcase. Margaret's heart jumped when she saw him. She had not seen her husband in over a year. "Daniel," she said softly. He set his suitcase down. "Margaret." Grace and Victoria rushed to greet him warmly. Mrs. Ease came downstairs smiling. That night, Daniel came to their room.
We need to talk. My sisters told me you have been disrespectful. Is this true?
No, I have done everything I can.
Then why were you thrown out?
Because I was falsely accused. I tried to tell you, but you would not listen.
"I believe my family," he said coldly. Margaret said nothing more. There was no point. My family, when trust is broken between husband and wife, when belief is absent, can love survive? Share your experiences with me. Days passed. Daniel spent time with his sisters. One evening, he went to get water. As he approached the kitchen, he heard voices from the next room. Grace and Victoria were talking.
I still cannot believe he believed us so easily. I told you it would work.
She is too weak to defend herself, and Daniel trusts us completely. Do you think she will ever find out we hid my undergarments ourselves deliberately? Why would she? No one listens to her anyway. Daniel froze completely. His heart pounded hard. Everything Margaret had tried to tell him was true. His sisters had deliberately lied about everything. He felt a deep wave of shame and anger. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He replayed every conversation, every accusation, every moment he had doubted his wife. The next morning, he called Margaret into their room. "Sit down," he said quietly. She sat on the edge of the bed. "I heard my sisters talking last night. They lied. About everything. They admitted they hid the items themselves just to make you look bad. They planned all of this." Margaret looked up at him with wide eyes, tears forming. "I am so deeply sorry. I should have believed you from the beginning. I failed you completely." Tears streamed down her face. "We are leaving this house," he said firmly. "Today, right now." Within an hour, they had packed all their belongings. Daniel called his mother and sisters into the living room. "We are leaving this house permanently," he announced clearly. "Leaving? Why?" Grace asked nervously. "Because I know the complete truth now. I heard you both talking and laughing. I know you lied deliberately about Margaret. I know everything you did to her." Grace and Victoria exchanged worried glances, their faces suddenly pale.
I am sorry, Mama, but I must do what is right for my marriage now. Margaret and I need our own space, our own life together.
Mrs. Ease nodded slowly, her expression sad but understanding. Daniel and Margaret walked out of the house together, carrying their bags. Daniel rented a small apartment in a quieter part of Lagos. It was modest, but it was completely theirs, finally. That evening, they sat together in their new living room. "Margaret, I need you to understand how deeply sorry I am. I chose my family over you wrongly. That was completely wrong of me. I should have believed you, should have protected you, should have listened when you tried to tell me the truth." "I felt so terribly alone, Daniel," Margaret said, wiping her tears. "Every single day, I felt like I was drowning in that house. And you were not there to help me." "I know," he said, "and I will spend the rest of our marriage proving to you that I can be the husband you deserve. I will never let anyone treat you that way again. I promise you that." Margaret looked around their small apartment. "I am willing to try rebuilding our relationship, but things must be completely different going forward. We need to build something new together, based on trust."
I know it's been hard, but I'm here now.
I want to believe that, Daniel.
That is what matters most. My besties, when someone finally stands up for you after so long, does it heal all the pain completely, or does the wound still need time to heal? I sincerely want your honest thoughts on forgiveness. Over the following weeks, Margaret and Daniel worked hard to rebuild their damaged relationship. It was not easy at all. There were many difficult conversations and painful moments where old hurts resurfaced, but they were both genuinely committed to healing and moving forward together. Daniel learned that marriage means actively protecting each other, even from family members if necessary. He realized that leaving Margaret alone with his family, without support or defense, had been his biggest mistake. He began checking in with her regularly, truly listening to her experiences, her feelings, her concerns. Margaret slowly began to find her voice again. She realized that staying silent had not protected her at all. In fact, her silence had made her more vulnerable. She learned that speaking her truth was important, even when not immediately believed. She learned she had real value as a person and deserved respect and kindness. One evening, as they sat together sharing a simple meal, Daniel said thoughtfully,
I learned something profoundly important through all this pain and struggle.
What is that?
Margaret asked with genuine interest.
That marriage means being a united team against whatever challenges has come our way, when I should have been standing firmly beside you.
It means believing your partner when they tell you something is wrong. I left you completely alone when I should have been standing firmly beside you, defending you, protecting you from harm.
That was my failure as a husband.
And I learned that I have to stand up strongly for myself.
I cannot wait passively for someone else to save me or rescue me from difficult situations. I have to find my own voice and use it courageously. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both reflecting on how far they had come together. My dear family, this story teaches us something vital and important about marriage and relationships.
In marriage,
When
your
you are
consistent
married,
presence
your
to
first
your
and
partners
primary
and
loyalty
active belief
must
are what
always be
truly
to your
matter.
partner, to your spouse. You cannot leave them vulnerable to mistreatment, even when that mistreatment comes from your own family members. Communication, active belief, and consistent presence matter enormously in a marriage. Margaret was completely innocent, but she could not defend herself alone against people who were determined to see her fail. Daniel had to learn the hard way that being a good husband means being genuinely present and supportive, even when you are physically far away. Some people in this world struggle with deep jealousy and profound insecurity, and they express these painful feelings by deliberately hurting others who they see as threats. Grace and Victoria acted out of their own unhappiness, their own feelings of inadequacy and resentment. But that does not excuse or justify their cruel actions toward an innocent person. When we witness someone being treated unfairly, when we see injustice happening right in front of us, we have a moral obligation to speak up boldly and defend them. Silence in the face of wrongdoing allows that harm to continue and even to escalate further.
Remember, my besties, trust is incredibly fragile and precious. And with care, we can heal. Once it has been broken badly, it takes genuine time, consistent effort, and real commitment from both people to rebuild properly. But with complete honesty, patient understanding, and genuine effort from both partners, healing is absolutely possible.
If you love our story, share it with someone who can relate, and like, share, and subscribe to the channel African Roots by Rabia.
See you in the next story. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.